Hello and welcome to ERUPT, the home for how businesses can scale and transform. Throughout this podcast, we aim to inspire and educate to help you and your business thrive. Across the course of our episodes, we'll be interviewing industry leaders to uncover some of the challenges across the world of work. We aim to give an insight into some of the fastest growing organisations across HR and technology. Please follow us on our journey to ERUPT and elevate your business. This episode is from our ERUPT Learning and Talent Conference, which was hosted in September 2022. The conference focused on topics from developing emotional intelligence to creating a transparent future career. Within this session, Jon Ingham, who is the Director at Strategic HR Academy, spoke about talent management continuing to become ever more critical to business performance. He discussed why now than ever before hyper-personalisation is so essential. I hope you enjoy, and make sure you check out the Go ERUPT website for further content and for all videos on demand.
UKG interested in hyper-personalisation because it relates particularly to HR service delivery. Looking for better ways to support individual employees, their requirements, their important life work moments, through HR digitalisation, process automation, service level insights, and so on. I'm interested in hyper-personalisation. I work for my organisation is the Strategic HR Academy. I've had a focus on strategic HR for quite some time. And my approach, my perspective to how HR can be more strategic has always been very people-centric. I've always thought the heart of people strategy is people, not just getting closer to the business. So again, this to me is sort of an extrapolation of where we've come from. I should point out these are my conclusions and recommendations. They're not necessarily UKG's perspectives or its route map or anything. We are interested in how HR is evolving, where it needs to go. And this is potentially very important because, as James was saying, everything has been changing, and HR needs to understand that, to think about how it can evolve in the future. And potentially, this change is so significant that hyper-personalisation could shape the next 25 years in the way that Dave Ulrich's strategic HR business partnering has shaped the last 25. So hopefully you'll find this a interesting, provocative and informative session. This is a thinking that we've been progressing through for a little bit of time now. There is a report available at HR Zone already. I'll give you the link to that at the end. And it's been an interesting process writing that report. And I've been on a bit of a journey about sort of how I see hyper-personalisation as well. And I guess when I started writing the report, I had expected to sort of focus on hyper-personalisation the way it's defined in most places, particularly outside HR, which does tend to be about the use of data, technology, AI, in order to closely target individuals, to be extremely personalised, to provide people with micro moments which really enable their decision, their actions real time. And I think all of that is true. And one of the things which became increasingly clear to me is that HR is very different to, or employment is very different to transacting on a website. Those micro moments are important, but employment is a long-term process. It involves a deeper relationship. And therefore, I think as well as the technology, we need to think about hyper-personalisation in terms of how we're actually helping somebody. So the moments that matter here are potentially those not necessarily about the most important experience, but the greatest amount of help that we can offer to people. And great question, Andrew. Thank you. So is it applying approaches previously used to customers to employees for understanding needs, wants? And is it heavily tech-based? And those are sort of the questions that I started off with. And the answer is sort of yes. And also know, because of that point I've been saying, that I think employment is different. So it builds on technology and it builds on those insights elsewhere. But I think in HR, it needs to be more than that as well. And I think it takes us well beyond what we're doing today about the employee experience. Even going back beyond the pandemic, employee experience, I think, has been the major focus, the main way that we've been trying to become more people-centric. And I'd suggest that most organizations have been somewhere on this spectrum at the bottom of the slide, either sort of using EX as sort of a supplementary concept, a little bit subservient to meeting their business objectives, still important, but not quite that important. And my experience working with a number of organizations using that perspective is that it hasn't really changed anything fundamental in their organizations. I call it the lipstick on a pig effect. You're sort of taking this pig, this clunky organization, and you're trying to dress it up and make it a bit prettier. But you've still got an old, traditional, clunky organization. Nothing very much has changed. Some organizations have moved, completely away from that. And you see this in some organizations undertaking agile HR or hacking HR or people operations, where employee experience is sort of everything that HR is about these days, and the business objectives have almost sort of dropped in importance. Now, you may guess that coming from the Strategic HR Academy, I think strategic HR is important, and that therefore I'd suggest that not worrying about business or talent objectives is highly dangerous, actually. So I don't think that's the right answer either. And I don't think the answer is to sort of try to balance those and find a midway point along the spectrum. I do think we need to somehow transcend that paradox and approach employee people centricity from a slightly different perspective. Let me just catch up with the questions as well. So Mark, you deal with everyone with respect and professionalism. That's wonderful. Great. I try to do so. So sometimes it's quite challenging, but I completely agree. That's what we need to do in any type of people or customer centricity. Can you say that you've been using hyper-personalisation even before it's been tagged as such? Yeah, to an extent. I think perhaps we can sort of put a little bit of meat around those bones. So, I mean, in a sense, not just HR, but business in general has been progressing through a sort of series of ideas about how they work, from sort of standardization to customization to personalization and so on. And I think that that approach to deal with everyone using respect and professionalism is behind that journey. But at each stage in that, we've perhaps introduced new tools, techniques, concepts, ideas, approaches, which have sort of helped us progress as well. So I think respect and professionalism is core. Yeah, if we don't have that, we're not going to get anywhere with hyper-personalisation. But I think there's more that we can add to this as well. So in this session, I want to deal with the core points of this conference, really. So talent, learning, digital technology, and leadership. They seem to fit very well around the hyper-personalisation concept too. So to start with talent and talent management and learning, just to point out that, in fact, sorry, just to go back to that last slide very briefly, transcending the paradox, I didn't explain, I think is about, seeing business objectives and individual aspirations as sort of equal and important, but moving away from this sort of seeing people as ends to a means to seeing people as ends in themselves, to really trying to focus on meeting individual needs as well as business needs. And not becoming less commercial. Businesses still need to be successful, but understanding that that success comes from trying to help people with their needs, even if they don't necessarily align perfectly with what the business is trying to do. So the focus of where we need to go today, I think, moves towards helping employees transform, helping them transform themselves to meet their own individual aspirations. And it's been interesting as I've developed those ideas to see that, you know, they're not completely new. I guess you'd be surprised if they were, particularly because I'm suggesting this is a journey that many organisations are already on. And two of my favourite books from this year, I think, play particularly and very strongly, very centrally to this sort of change that I'm talking about. So firstly, Marshall Goldsmith's Earned Life book. In this, Goldsmith suggests there's no such thing as happy ever after. And what individuals actually need to do is continually strive for happiness and meaning in their lives. And to make that work, they need to focus on their longer term aspirations, their dreams, rather than simply sort of objective achievements. And the organizations can help them. Organizations can provide support, ability, motivation, understanding, confidence to help people with their own individual transformations. The same message also in Whitney Johnson's Smart Growth book, where she talks about people sort of progressing through this sequence, developing their competence, their autonomy, their relatedness, and the organizations, again, can help them through that journey. And the important point that Johnson also adds to this, which I really like, is that for businesses to transform, which we all need to do these days, our people need to be transforming themselves as well. So we need to help people transform to help our organizations transform as well. So that, to me, becomes the central focus of talent management. We still need to manage our talent in a way that will strategically enable our businesses, and we need to enable our talent, support our talent to to move towards their own aspirations. I think that's a really interesting way of thinking about talent management. I think because if you take that perspective, I think it changes everything that we do within HR, within talent. And yet, in a sense, it's not a complete change, because I think that is where we're heading. You know, if you look at where HR has been prior to the pandemic, with our increasing focus on employee experience, everything that we've been doing during and since the pandemic, to me, it sort of makes sense that is where we're heading, and that if we did help people transform to meet their aspirations, that would pay off. You know, you'd attract more people, you'd retain people, you'd help them be more motivated in their organizations. So I think this is, I think this idea of transformation is sort of where we're heading. And the way we do that is through a hyper-personalised approach, bringing in that respect and professionalism, and using, and this is the next piece we'll be moving on to, digital technology and leadership to help us do that. But if anybody has any questions, thoughts, challenges, because this is I think a rather different way of doing business, please do share them in the chat. Andrew, thank you. I've worked with people who see work as routine and transactional. I pitch up, do my job, get paid and go home. Yeah, that sort of central idea behind quiet quitting these days. What's your take on people in this category? I think people will, a lot of people... Okay, so there are central core elements of motivation which apply to most people, but people also have unique motivators. I like another really interesting book published this year was Marcus Buckingham's Love and Work, where he talks about this idea of weirds, that we have our own individual weirds or strengths, and they colour our motivations and what we're trying to gain, which again is why we have these individual aspirations. And some people some people's motivations will come from outside work. So they come to work to earn money, to do something else. However, I still think very often in our organizations, there are things we can do to help them do that, sorry. So if we can understand our people's aspirations, we can help facilitate them to meet those. They may not be looking for that help from their work, but if we can help them as they help us, that starts to develop a more relational rather than transactional basis between us and our employees. Ilis, thank you. You agree with the points about personalisation. Great. Oh, doctoral research. I'm sure you know much more about this than I do then. So the operational HR delivery. So UKG will be particularly interested in your findings. Was how important personalisation was to employees and managers. Absolutely, because we are all different. And this goes back as well to the previous point about building on what's been happening outside HR, particularly with how businesses treat their consumers. These days we're all used to a personalised support. One of the examples which is always covered talking about hyper-personalisation, is the way Netflix provides personalised guidance for you. We expect that from our employment because that's what we get elsewhere. I just think in employment terms, it needs to be deeper, heavier, more meaningful. If a website at work sort of helps us move in a particular direction and makes that easy and frictionless and so on, as UKG in their service delivery has been trying to do for years, that's great. And these days we need that service delivery to be able to help employees move towards their particular transformation aspirations as well. Justine, you need the underpinning paradox shift that organizations are places for people. Absolutely. Or how we describe the difference, i.e. not businesses are all about making money. Or I think that's a really interesting point. I don't know. I'm not fixed on this. I think I'm still on a bit of a journey myself. I still sort of believe that the point of business is business, is making money. I just think the way to do that, I'm not sure, because we need to see people as ends rather than sort of means to an end. But if we treat people that way, then the business will make more money. Anyway, Justine, perhaps we can take that offline, have a longer chat, or perhaps James, that might be one we pick up as well. So how do we do this? What does this hyper-personalisation look like in order to facilitate the type of transformation that we're talking about? And I think the two key components are the two main focuses of today, digital technology and leadership. So firstly, we need high touch, deeply human leadership. We need leaders when they're thinking about their people, either individually or across the organization, to be looking at how we can help people and help them achieve their life work aspirations. I think one interesting part of that perspective, which I guess we've just sort of touched on, is I think leaders need to drop their focus around return on investment. Not that there won't be a ROI, I think there will be, but if we focus on that, it sort of brings us back to that old traditional focus on business centricity. We need to assume, we need to believe there will be a return on investment and then not focus on it. But we also need we do need digital technology. A high touch approach is just too costly to scale up across the whole organization without effective use of automation and so on. So we need our HR service delivery systems to continue and develop, providing easy, frictionless support and extending that to helping people achieve their life work aspirations as well. And this slide, I love this slide. It's not totally relevant. So it's a couple of decades old. It dealt with the development of sort of customization in consumer banking. But the core focus that we need to combine these two polarities, potential opposites of high touch, high tech, combine them together. And the way that you combine them is through this sort of iterative series of cycles where you become a little bit more high touch, which enables you to bring in more high tech, which then facilitates moving to be high touch and so on. So you sort of go through this progression, this flow channel towards high touch, high tech, hyper-personalised support, enabling people to achieve their transformations. Marcus is about karma. Love it. Yes, absolutely. And Andrew, so we develop analytical leadership to measure and drive employee experience and transformation in the same vigor as financials. Oh, yes. Yes. Okay, look, separate topic to this. My own perspective on analytics is yes, we need to do it. We need to understand people. We need insights into people. Understanding people is the core to, I believe, strategic HR and potentially our new hyper-personalised future as well. But linked to everything else we've been talking about, I think a lot of the most important aspects of people and organisations are qualitative and subjective. And therefore, where you say the same vigour, the same energy, yes, but I don't think we should analyse people in the way that we analyse widgets in our organisations. I don't think that works, personally. We need the data and we need to supplement it. This idea of small data alongside the big data, with our insights and emotional intuition and everything else that we can use to manage and develop and support people better. Energy is a better choice of words. Thank you. Yeah, great. Right. So just a couple more minutes then, and then so we've got a little bit of time for a conversation as well, James. So clearly I'm talking about sort of broad brush, high level, macro changes here rather than sort of specific interventions, and therefore these are the 5 things that you need to do. However, I guess I do think there are sort of core changes, key actions that we'll need to take to make this hyper-personalised future come to fruition. And probably the first bullet point there should have been, yes, let's bring to employment that perspective about respect and professionalism and so on. If we don't do that, we're not going to get anywhere. And linked to that, we need to continue everything we've been doing. I do think employee transformation is more important than employee experience, but experience doesn't go away. It's still important. We let's carry on doing everything that we've been doing. I think the big new thing is talking to people about their aspirations, their individual purpose. And again, that's not completely new. Lots of, particularly professional services firms, financial services firms, have already been facilitating people to identify their individual purpose as well as an organizational purpose. Great. We need to continue doing that because most people don't have that sense of their individual motivation, their career driver, their weird, their strengths, their personal aspirations. So we need to facilitate that because that clarity in their aspirations acts as the hook, the energy, the focus of the high tech, high touch, hyper-personalized actions we then need to take. I think the other interesting aspect of hyper-personalisation is that the more we personalise, the more we need to standardise at the same time. Because we can't personalise everything. So again, you go through one of those sort of incremental cycles, personalising a bit that enables you to standardise, that enables you to personalise, and so on. And the standardisation, I think, comes from understanding what types of life work opportunities and journeys an organisation can offer. And sort of identifying and creating customized paths or routes to enable particular types of transformation, and then using that as the hook and the brand to attract organizations to attract individuals that are after that type of transformation. And you'll always find some employees will want different types of transformation, but by branding around it, it encourages you to have more of those employees who value the types of transformation that you can facilitate. So, businesses have always differentiated, branded themselves around a particular differentiation to their consumers. I think now we need to do that for our employees as well. There is a range of other actions that we will need to take, and you'll find some of those, at least, in the report I've written for UKG on HR Zone. The link to download that report is here, and please do visit UKG and perhaps the Strategic HR Academy for more information as well. So thank you very much. I hope that has been informative, provocative, and so on. Thank you very much for the discussions in the chat. I've enjoyed responding to those, and has helped my own thinking as well. So I appreciate that. And James, I think we've hopefully got a few minutes.
We have got a few minutes, John. That was great. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. I love this sort of notion of micro moments that you're talking about. Creating those sort of employee experience interventions maybe that make you feel special as an individual. Have you seen any businesses do that particularly well, or any examples of where that's been brought to life?
I've seen and in fact, one of the things we do in the report is, rather than sort of say, look, this is hyper-personalisation, this is what it looks like, I've tried to identify different sort of aspects of hyper-personalisation, because I think, as well as customizing to an individual, the approach needs to be customized for a particular organization. So different organizations will do different things, and I think there are examples of organizations that are excelling in different aspects of this journey. The case study we refer to in the report is Unilever, because they're just doing so much around helping people think about their individual purpose, and supporting people in that very sort of high touch way that I've been talking about. But in terms of those sort of micro moments, I don't know. I'm struggling to think of an example. I'm sure there are some.
Well, I look forward to having a look at the download there from HR Zone. The other thing, the big question, I think you were sort of like and ahhing about, was about this means to an end piece about people and about their engagement, making the most out of that versus making money, and how you strike that balance. Where do you? I think you sit on more the people side. You said look after people, the business will make money. Is that naturally going to happen though, or do we have to really think about how we make sure that process is there to drive productivity?
I think I think it comes through a belief more than anything else. I'm sure over time we will generate analytics that will help sort of prove the case as well. But I think certainly at the moment it's got to be led by a belief that this is the right thing to do. And I think organisations like Unilever, that's sort of mainly where it's come from. But there's a lot going on, isn't there? And there are lots of changes or ideas around corporate governance and so on, and sort of changing the formal sort of purpose of a company. And as we move towards more stakeholder-based society, I think all of those changes are moving us in a direction that perhaps we can start to say the purpose of a company is looking after that range of stakeholders, including employees, rather than simply shareholders. I just don't think we need to make that change for the logic behind hyper-personalisation and employee transformation to make sense. I think we can still say the purpose of business is business, the purpose of business is making money, and this still, I think, works, because people are changing, organizations are changing. You look at the type of journey that we've been on. Whilst I think this is new, I don't think it's that new. I think many organizations are already starting to grapple with how do we change when we really need to focus on people as our customers, just as our external customers are, and what happens when we start to sort of meet their needs as well. And hopefully there are some suggestions in the report that will help answer that.
Fantastic. Okay, put you on the spot. If you had to, your HR director listening and watching now, we've got to advise them about one element the journey that the employees go on. We've got to prioritize one element within that journey that we're going to personalize. What would you focus on?
I think the key is probably learning. So again, I love the theme of this conference. It's spot on for, well, certainly hyper-personalisation. I'm sure lots of other things as well. Learning is key. We need to help. Transformation is about learning. So we need to help people transform. We need to help people learn. The difference here, so what I'd be trying to discuss as an HRD is that learning needs to be as much about the person and what they're motivated to learn and what's going to make the difference to them. Because if they learn those things, there are bound to be positive benefits for the organization as well. But if it's something that they're personally motivated by, the learning that they engage in is going to be much more powerful than trying to say, we want you to learn this and putting someone on the course. We know that doesn't work. If we can get people to think about their aspirations, perhaps facilitate that, input into that, it's great that you want to learn this thing. Perhaps you could sort of focus on that aspect of it because that aspect's going to be powerful for us as well. Then there's a real sort of joint benefit in helping that person learn. And things are just changing so quickly these days. So this focus in many organizations at the moment on learning and the flow of work is absolutely right. We need to make that happen, but it's not going to be enough. People. I spend most of my life in HR. HR practitioners do not learn anything like as much as we have to be learning. There are vast amounts of knowledge and insight out there. If we're doing one conference a year, great, and it's wonderful it's this conference, but we need to be investing a huge amount, John. Much more time.
Isn't there an opportunity for the HR and people function to really take a forefront within business now? I think we've been talking for years about HR having that seat at the table. Well, that seat is there. It's actually probably driving the bus now, and people are starting to get it. So you talk about the growth of the people function itself. One of the things that I've been looking at is that HR for HR as a capability area is probably under-resourced, and that isn't that piece there. So I think that'll be interesting to see how that sort of evolves over time as well.
This podcast was brought to you by ERUPT at Annapurna, the #1 platform that case studies the organisations that not only disrupt, but those that erupt. Please visit our new Go ERUPT website for more content and log in to watch the full episodes from the conference. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Make sure to watch out for the next.